Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm finally setting up my media journal for 2024. I know that we're already in the second half of the year, but honestly, it's never too late to start journaling. This is the lilac notebook from Archer and Olive's new collection. I initially wanted to save this notebook for another purpose and maybe use a B5 notebook instead for my media journal. But I changed my mind and went ahead with this one in the end. I've already written my name down, so let's move on to the cover page. I'm putting this 5mm shooting star lavender washi tape from Simply Gilded along the edges, forming a border that sort of frames the page. You'll see that I'm using this pattern throughout the initial setup pages. Next, I'm ripping this piece of scrapbook paper from the Inks Drop set, which I think you can get from places like Stationery Bell or jdramas. But if you're in Southeast Asia like me, you can get this from Shopee. I'm pairing it with this lilac paper which I got from my local stationery store. So over here, you can see that I was a bit indecisive of the placement of the papers, but once I find the combination that I like, I'm just gluing them onto the notebook roughly in the center of the page. For the title, I'm stamping in the words Media Journal and January onto the papers using my alphabet stamps. I'm not too sure when this journal will last me till, so I'll leave the end month blank for now, and we'll move on to the next page, which is my index page. Again, I'm using the shooting star washi tape for the borders, but this one is in the rainbow colorway. For my regular bullet journal, I don't use an index page. In my media journal though, I find that the index is useful for me to track my spreads. I'm using a couple of stickers from Planning with K, including a banner header sticker and some deco stickers. These are just leftover stickers from previous kits that I've used. The month headers are from the Bojo Migration kit in warm tone. Since I'm going with a purple vibe for the initial setup pages, I think these stickers match perfectly. My index page is pretty simple. I just include the month header and all of the shows that I complete within that month. I will then put a cross on each dot after I'm done setting up the spread for that show. Basically, I'm using the same key as what I'm using in my bullet journal. I think I can fit around 8 months on the index page, but this notebook will probably only last me till my June spreads, so I'm just filling in the information till June. So I guess if you want to spoil yourself with what's coming up in future videos, you can pause and read my index page. I wanted to change the color of the click art pen that I use so that they match the stickers better, so I'm just taking a piece of off-cut paper to cover my mistakes. And finally, I'm using my dot marker and Crayola super tips for the dots. And now we'll move on to the next spread. So this spread will be similar to a book bracket spread, but since I don't read a lot of books, I guess this would be a TV show bracket spread. Again, I'm using the shooting star washi tape but in white for the borders this time. Over here, you can see that I'm drawing a bunch of X's, but actually I'm just marking where to paste each TV show poster. I did not want to draw any solid lines in case it turned out ugly, so once I print out all the posters by the end of the year, this spread will make more sense. Each box is 2.5 cm across and 4 cm down. This is the measurement that I came up with based on how my Canon selfie prints out my posters, so it may differ according to your preference. If you have never heard of a book bracket before, it's something like a tournament style kind of layout where the best of one month will battle it out with the best of another month. I say battle it out, but it's just based on how I rate each title. Then the winner of that round battles with the next winner and so on. For my version, I'm just comparing within each quarter. So the first round will be the best for January, February and March. Then the winner of quarter 1 will battle with the winner of quarter 2, then quarter 3 versus quarter 4. Then the winner of each round will battle it out for the title of the best show of the year. I do not want to differentiate between shows released in 2024 and shows not released in 2024, so any shows I complete within that month will be eligible to win the best show of the month. I'm just stamping in the initials of each month and SF for final and F for final in the middle row and drawing arrows so that future me will know how to fill in this spread in future. And now we'll move on to the next spread. Keeping in line with the design on the other pages, I'm using the white shooting star washi for the borders again. This page will be for another type of layout to find the best show of the year. I first saw this from Monica at Bibliophile by Night in her reading journal video over on Jashi Korean's channel. I think it's called the Prioritisation Matrix. So instead of comparing each title head to head in rounds, we're comparing the best titles from each month against the best titles from all of the other months. Again, I think this will be clearer once everything is filled in by the end of the year. But for now, I'm drawing a 1 cm by 1 cm box for each month's initials and stamping them using my alphabet stems again. And finally, I'm drawing a grid so that I can fill in the winner of each pair at the end of the year. So if January is better than February, I will put a J in that box. I will definitely try to show how this page will look like at the end of the year. I'm gonna leave the page on the left blank for now, so we'll move on to the cover page for the month of January. I have printed out all of the posters I need for January using my Canon selfie. I actually did a video talking about that, so I will link it in the cards above. By the way, I forgot to print borderless for this, and I'm lazy to reprint it, so these posters will be smaller than usual. I'm ripping the same ink drop paper that we used earlier and pasting it on opposite corners of the spread. For my media journal, I like using this scrapbooking style, so you'll see it more often in my spreads throughout my media journal. For the borders on top and bottom of the spread, I'm using the clear pink foil washi tape from Exo Mama Plans, and for the sides, I'm using an older purple tape from Daiso. Then I'm cutting the individual posters. For this particular format, I've made a template on Canva for a 4x6 photo size document and filling it with the 16 frame option from the Elements section. I think this size is just nice for me to fit all of the shows I watch in a month. I'm rearranging the posters first before I stamp in the headers for each section. The ones on the left are the shows that were airing and ended in January, and those on the right are shows that I binge watched throughout the month. At the bottom, they are the shows that I dropped or did not finish. Though I made a mistake, I actually dropped Queen of Divorce back in February. Anyways, I've been so obsessed with these silicone alphabet stamps since I watched Erin Smith's reading journal videos, so you'll see me use them more often in my media journal. So after confirming the placement of each poster, I'm gluing them in their respective sections. I've actually completed 12 dramas this month, which is quite a lot. I feel like January is always the time where I try to clear as many shows as I can from my plan to watch list. But you'll see in future videos that 12 is actually more than what I usually watch in a month. I'm just writing down all of the ratings for now. I feel like this cover page serves as a good overview for the month. I can easily see the highest rated show of the month, and in this case there were actually 2 shows which I gave 8.5 out of 10. But out of the 2, I think I prefer Death's Game slightly more than Welcome to Samdal-ri, so I'm writing that on my bracket spread for now and will include that in my matrix later on in the year. For my media journal, I usually stick to the same theme throughout the month. The themes are based on whatever leftover stickers I have hoarded over the years. So this month, I'm using this pack of gemstone and flower stickers for the theme, so you will see it throughout the month. Now that our cover page is done, let's move on to the first spread of the month. I usually start my spreads by laying down the decorative papers as well as the washi tape first. So how I choose to decorate the spreads for each show is based on the show's poster. For this particular show, the poster is very orangey and peachy, so I decided to use this orange construction paper and pair it with the bold rainbow red washi from Exo Mama Plans. I did not realize that this is the exact same combination that I did for this series back in 2022, so I guess that shows some consistency. Anyway, the show is called Don't Call It Mystery SP. If you're not familiar with J-dramas, SPs are usually like special episodes which can act as a bridge between the series and the movie, especially if the movie comes out a few years after the series has ended. Or it could also be a one-off sequel to the original series, or it could just be a standalone show that is released during the holidays and such. So for this particular SP, it's more like a promotional episode for the movie, which I believe is already out, and since this was available on Viki, which I had a free trial for, I decided to check it out. So as I mentioned, I watched the original series back in 2022, and I wasn't sure if I could remember what happened. I'm honestly that kind of person that watches a lot of shows but forget the ending. So if you were to ask me who's the culprit in a particular show, I wouldn't be able to answer you. But I'm surprised that I actually remember what the show was about. So basically, in the original series, the main character is Totono, who's played by Suda Masaki. He's a university student who somehow gets interrogated as a suspect for a murder that happened within his vicinity. He manages to catch the real killer and clear his name, and from then on, he helps the police with their investigations. So when I first started to watch this special episode, I thought I'd click on the wrong thing, because the first half is exactly the plot of the first episode of the series, except that there are a few additional scenes featuring a new character, Sagara Ren, played by Shiseon Jun, whom I've grown to love since Half Blue Sky, though that show is not that great. So I think the first half of the SP is really meant to be a rehash of the first episode for those people who did not watch the original series but may want to watch the movie after watching this SP. The second half though, it is a new case where Totono and Sagara go to this seminar place as a part-time job and they end up solving a case. It turned out to be a very heartwarming case, so I really enjoyed that. So I think if you have watched the original series, you can skip to the second part of the SP. I enjoyed the SP more than the series though, mainly because of Sagara. I think his cheerful demeanor complements Totono's very serious and lonely personality. So I think he's a good addition to the entire series. They should have just included him from the beginning. I think in the series, Totono was paired up with the female detective, but her character was honestly quite forgettable. The show was mainly about Totono and his crime-solving skills, so I like that now there is another person solving the case as well. Overall, I give this 8 out of 10, mainly because the first half is a rehash of the first episode, but now I'm excited to watch the movie. Hopefully it's available soon. So now let's move on to the next show, which is the first drama I completed in full in 2024. It is called Nobuta Will Produce. Since the poster is of two of them sitting in front of a green chalkboard, I decided to use this green construction paper along with the chocolate, juniper and bose washi from Simply Gilded. I find that the green is a bit too in your face, so I decided to use mostly brown for the rest of the writing. For each spread, I usually write down the cast, the number of episodes, the genre and the network. So over here, you can see the problem that I have. I usually write down main cast for the details and end up writing everyone that is included in the credits. So for this spread, I don't really have space to include everyone's names, so I'm continuing on the other side. But I think moving forward, I will just write cast as the title and write down everyone's names to my heart's content. Basically, everyone that's listed on the My Drama list page for the show. Something new for this year, I decided to include the star rating as well as the dates watched for any shows that I binge watched throughout the month. I honestly wasn't planning to watch this. It was just something that I always see on Netflix, and it's a title that I always hear in the early days of my J-drama life. I feel like it's considered as one of those cult classic, old school J-dramas that you have to watch at least once in your life. So I felt compelled to watch it, especially after checking the What's Living Netflix website and seeing it on there. I always check the website ever since the show BG, both seasons 1 and 2, were removed from Netflix, and I only found out about it when I decided to watch that show on a random day. So I was very sad, and I do not want that to happen anymore in my life. So once I saw that this show was leaving, I knew that it was now or never. So this show is about this girl who is newly transferred to the school. Her name is Nobuko, and she has a very gloomy appearance in general. So people didn't really like her and even treated her quite badly. The main guy is Suji, who is played by Kamenashi Kazuya. He's like the most popular boy in school, and he somehow teams up with this other guy called Akira, who is played by Yama P. They decided to do a makeover for Nobuta, who is Nobuko by the way, and sort of become her producer in a way, hence the title. But the thing is, they have to keep the whole thing a secret, because if not, Shuji's reputation at school will be affected. Because Nobuko is weird and Akira is also weird. I was first introduced to J-dramas in 2007 through this show called Trick. It is my all-time favorite comfort series, and when I first started to get more serious in watching J-dramas in 2012, that was the first show I watched. So all in all, I would say that I've been watching J-dramas for more than 10 years. So after watching and learning about countless number of shows, I feel like Nobuta Will Produce didn't really bring something new to the table within this genre. I can name at least 2 other shows with a similar premise, and overall it just feels very dated. I did enjoy seeing younger versions of everyone though, especially Kame. He is so young here, like it's kind of weird. There's also a very young Toda Erika, who is just a supporting character here, which I think is insane because she has been in lead roles for as long as I've watched J-dramas. There's also Horikita Maki, who is the titular Nobuta. She was like the it girl back then. Like, I remember seeing her in every other show, and then she got married to that comedian dude and retired from the entertainment industry altogether. So yeah, I guess for the nostalgia, this show was fun, but overall I give this 7.5 out of 10. I just wanted something more unique. Well, that was the first show I binge binge watched in 2024, we'll move on to the first ongoing show that I completed this year. This next show is called The Story of Park's Marriage Contract, though I actually wrote down Park's Contract Marriage instead. Yeah, I always get the two mixed up. The poster has some florals and pinkish undertones, so I decided to use this pink construction paper for the decoration and pair it with the Bloom Sakura floral floor washi tape and the Seoul passport washi from Simply Gilded. So this show is about Yeonu, who is someone who does not conform to societal norms back in the Joseon era. She gets into an arranged marriage, but on her wedding night, her husband died from a heart disease, and she also gets kidnapped and thrown into a well and ends up being transported to present-day Seoul. She gets involved with a man who is the splitting image of her dead husband and ends up in a contract marriage with him as well. I actually liked the first half of the show. I thought that it was quite funny. There was a scene where she was trying to get back to Joseon and somebody was watching a sageuk, which is the Korean historical drama, and she thought that she could get back to Joseon through the TV. Yeah, that was kind of funny. It kind of reminded me of the show Durian's Affair, which was also another time traveling drama, except that in this case, she didn't wash her hair with the toilet bowl water. And there was also a scene where she was walking around present-day Seoul, walking really lost, with all the modern buildings and such, and she was also walking around the Gyeongbokgung area, thinking that it's still a palace that is being used, and the Seoul passport washi just reminded me of that scene, so that's why I'm using it in this spread. Unfortunately, I think that the show's second half was terrible. With time-traveling dramas, there's always a risk of writers not knowing how to explain the time travel aspect, and in this case, I'm not entirely sure if the writer even knew what was happening in the show. There were a lot of things that were not explained, and there were a lot of things that happened only to serve as convenient plot devices. I do not want to spoil the ending, but in short, it was horrendous, nothing made sense. In terms of acting, I feel like it's finally time for me to admit that I'm not a fan of Lee Se-young's acting. Her character just seems so bland in every show I've seen her in. I didn't realize that the male lead was in Under the Queen's Umbrella, although I think it's because his character was written out quite early. In this show though, I don't really have much to say about him because the script itself was bad. Seeing Kim Hyo-jin as the loving mother was quite refreshing though. I've always associated her with antagonist roles because she has always been the antagonist every time I see her. So it was kind of fun to see her in a more positive role. In the end, I only give this 7 out of 10, which may seem high, but the way I rate things, anything below 8 is pretty bad and 7 usually means that I got bored with the show. So yeah, this show is not that good. By the way, if you see the small notebook at the side, it is actually my commonplace book, which I already have a video for, but essentially, I use it to collect my thoughts, facts, anything random that comes to mind that I want to take note of. I find it helpful to have a place to refer to for any thoughts that I had while watching a show, because as you can see, sometimes there's a 6 months gap between when I finish a show and when I do my media journal. And digging through my old tweets is kind of hard after a while, though I don't really know whether we are still calling them tweets. But for now, let's move on to the next spread. This spread is for the show Death's Game, both part 1 and part 2. Before I go on, there are some trigger warnings for this show, especially related to self-exit and self-harm. So if you're not comfortable with these topics, please feel free to skip to the next part. The poster as well as the overall mood of the show are quite dark, so I chose to use this piece of black paper. I'm using the Caviar Bow Drip Washi, which is one of the Simply Gilded and Cookie Sticker Co. collab washi, but the washi is quite old, it is not as sticky, so I'm using a glue tape to stick it onto the paper. For the title, I'm using an Archer & Olive acrylic marker. I swear that I can pronounce the word in my head, but not out loud. I find that the ink really pops on a dark background, and it's honestly the only marker that I have that will appear on dark paper. So this is really the only time that I will use this pen. I'm just really lazy to maintain the tips and shake it every time before use, so I rarely use it. For the other details about the show, I'm using a silver pen from the Sarasa Clip Deco Shine metallic line, as well as a normal white Sarasa Clip pen. I find that the Sarasa overall is the best gel pen for this black paper. Anyway, I've waited until both parts of the show were released before watching. If you've seen any of my previous media journal flip-throughs, you'll know that I hate this recent trend of splitting a show into 2 for no good reason. I blame Netflix mostly for it, but I'm seeing both Amazon Prime and Disney Plus doing the same thing lately. So Death Game is about Itae, who's played by So In-guk, who is unable to get a job after 7 years, and his girlfriend also left him at the same same time. So feeling depressed, he decided to end his life, but he ends up meeting Pak Sodam, who is death personified. As a punishment, he has to go through death 12 times in 12 different bodies. So at first I was kind of confused as to why we suddenly see Choi Si-won and Song Hoon out of nowhere, but after realizing what the premise of the show was, I had a fun time watching this. It was so fun to see so many cameos. I'm not sure if you can really call them cameos though, but having actors like Lee Jae-wook, Kim Jae-wook and Kim Ji-hoon all in the same show was definitely a treat. I feel like I haven't seen Park Sodam in ages. I think the last time I saw her was in Parasite, but she got sick after a while, and I think this is probably her first drama that she's in after so many years, since she mostly does movies, so I'm kind of happy to see her again. And Seo In-guk is always an actor that I always like to watch, but he was in a couple of bad dramas lately, so I'm glad that this is not one of those. The only downside to this show is that after a while, it became a bit preachy. It sounds like a PSA on self-exit prevention awareness, and there was also one side plot which kind of strayed from the main plot, but it was interesting to see how all of the different personalities are linked to one another. Overall, it was a really fun watch and I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I waited for both parts to be released before watching, because I would have screamed at a cliffhanger at the end of episode 4. Now that it's done, let's move on to something a little less nail-biting, though there is still some mystery involved. I've been watching a lot of reading journal videos lately, and I have been really inspired to change up my layouts. So this next spread is a bit different from how I usually set up my media journal spreads. I have this vintage looking scrapbook paper which I cut into half, and then I tore up each half using my ruler which has a scallop edge. Then I rip a piece of green paper into half as well. I'm overlapping the two pieces of paper so that the green paper appears to be under the scrapbook paper. I'm doing this on all 4 corners. I hope that makes sense. If not, hopefully the video is clearer. Anyway, the scrapbook paper has some musical notes on it which fits the show perfectly. This show is called Maestra Strings of Truth, and it started airing back in December of last year. I believe that this is a remake of a French TV series, but I'm not too familiar with the original work, so my opinions are just based on this Korean version. For the title, I'm trying to use my uppercase silicone alphabet stems, but for some reason, I find that the ink is not very saturated when I use the silicone stems, so I had to go over with my black Zig Clean color marker, but you can see how perfectly the wooden stems work with my ink pad, so I don't really know what the issue is. The stems feel a bit oily though, so maybe that's the case. I don't really have space to include washi tape on this spread, so we have to skip the washi this time, which is such a shame because I do have a lot of musical washi tapes that will go well with this theme. Anyways, more about the show. It is about this orchestra conductor who is known to be very uptight and strict. She just became the conductor for this particular philharmonic orchestra, and the members don't really like her. I can't remember what his position is, but her ex-lover is someone who is kind of important to the orchestra management, but she's married and both her and her husband are a quite well-known couple. So as she begins her new role in this orchestra, strange incidents begin to happen. Mostly people getting injured, though honestly I can't remember if anybody died. So the police were always on her trail because the victims are somehow related to her. At the same time, she's battling with something that may affect her career in future. So honestly, I quite enjoyed this even though I was always behind each week. I liked the mystery, though it was kind of predictable, like you can guess who the culprit is easily. This is the first Leong A drama that I completed since her comeback. She was in a very popular saga called Jewel in the Palace, which I watched as a kid, so I definitely have to rewatch that sometime soon. She was in another drama recently, but I dropped that because I got bored. So I'm kind of happy that I managed to complete this. The male lead, Lee Mo-seng, he was kind of creepy, like he was a walking red flag, though I guess he's supposed to be sweet at times. The actor though, I am beginning to love him. I first saw him in Cleaning Up, and I liked him back then and I like him now, though I really want to see him in a fluffy rom-com instead of something so serious next time. I was quite surprised that this series only has 12 episodes, with each running for about 1 hour, which is a bit unusual for TVN who loves a longer runtime, like 80 minutes per episode. Honestly, this feels more like an SBS production than a TVN one, but overall, I gave this 8 out of 10. It was not bad. I enjoyed this, but it was kind of predictable. You'll see that when I convert my 10-point rating scale to a 5-star system, the numbers don't quite match up. I did some adjustments, so I might probably show it in a future video, but for now, let's move on to the next spread. So this next spread is for the show Tell Me That You Love Me, which is the Korean remake of a J-drama of the same name. For the decoration on this spread, I'm using this, I don't really know what you call this color, but it's very neutral neutral and beigey and tan kind of color. It sort of matches her scarf in the poster as well. For the washi tape, I'm using the Vanilla Bean Tone on Tone washi tape from Simply Gilded. I don't really like this color combination because I'm not a neutral girly, but we'll see if that changes in the future. Probably not, because I don't really want to be a sad bitch kid. Anyways, the show is about this aspiring actress, Ma-eun, who gets involved with this artist who has a hearing impairment. His name is Jinwoo, and they somehow will fall in love, and it's really about the obstacles that they face along the way. I honestly feel a bit conflicted with this show because I don't really know whether I like it or not. In the beginning, it was very good, like it was very slow paced, but I really like the warm and cozy romantic kind of vibes, which is kind of expected for a show with such a premise. Honestly, kinda reminded me of the J-drama Silent. It has a very similar vibe. Like, both the male leads have a hearing impairment, and both the female leads try their best to learn sign language to communicate with them better, and they will fall in love in the process. But this one is a bit different because I don't really like the female lead that much. The male lead, gyeongseong, I have not seen him before because I think he's mainly in movies, and I don't really watch a lot of K-movies. But I've heard of him because I think my sister has watched a movie with him in it. Honestly, I can't say how accurate his Korean sign language is, but to me, I think he's a fantastic and phenomenal actor. Like, I can tell what emotions he's trying to convey without even saying a word. And he's so attractive. Like, for his age, he's so good looking. I am beginning to love him. The female lead though, not so much. She was in Hospital Playlist, and I did not realize how weak her acting was back then because she was more of a supporting role, and she was also in Monstrous, and what was that show? Again My Life? No, Reborn Rich, and I didn't like her then, and I didn't like her here either. I think her character also got destroyed halfway. She got annoying after a while, though I'm glad that they did not go the same route as the original, thank god. I will not spoil what that plot is, but she remained annoying till the end. There's also the second male lead, who is her best friend, who will obviously only like her when she's with another guy. He's so annoying. I hate such a love triangle. And then there's also the brother, who is equally annoying, and the neighbor, who's also annoying. Like, why are they looking down on people with disabilities? It's 2023. So overall, I give this 8 out of 10, but honestly it's closer to 7.9 out of 10. But we'll move on to the next spread, which is also a show with an annoying love triangle. For this spread, I'm using another piece of scrapbook paper from the Inkstrop set. I think the colors match the font of the title on this poster, which you will see later. I'm using washi tapes from Simply Gilded's Valentine's Day collection from this year because the show is about Cupid, and isn't it great to have washi tapes that fit the show perfectly? I was trying to use the silicone alphabet stamps for the title, but because it was not stamped fully the first time, I tried to stamp it again and ended up having this double vision kind of title. I tried to fix it, but I still hated it. So I ended up pasting another piece of that scrapbook paper on top of it. And I just used my plain old black marker to write down the title, and I think it looks much better now. Anyways, the show is called My Man is Cupid, and it's also a show that was carried over from last year to this year. It's about this man who is Cupid. I don't really know how it works. Like, there's more than one Cupid. I'm not sure if they're all Cupids or if they're like Cupid's assistants. And then there's one major Cupid because there was like this old man overlooking all of them. I'm just gonna go with the idea that they're all Cupids. So our main Cupid is Sang-hyuk. Because of a mistake he made in the past, his wings were burned, and in order to get back his wings, he has to go through a few metamorphoses. On his current and final incarnation, he meets a woman called Baekyeon, who is down on luck in love. She has never had a successful relationship before, and because he's Cupid, he's able to see that she doesn't have a red thread. So in East Asian cultures, a red thread is basically something that links someone to their soulmate. So he's like, why does everybody have a red thread except for this girl? Based on the title, you probably know that maybe it's because he's her soulmate. So basically, this is a romance drama, but there's also a murder mystery plot because in his previous incarnation, he was a detective chasing after a serial killer. There's also a detective in the current timeline who is the second main lead. Honestly, as a whole, I kind of enjoyed this for the most part. It was quite fun, the romance was cute, and it was a show that I was looking forward to watching each week. The murder mystery was okay, but I thought that it took away the main focus of the show, which is about the romance of this Cupid and how is he going to be with this woman when he's on his final incarnation. reincarnation. I think the show has enough plot for 12 episodes, but it went on for 16. So there were a lot of fillers, especially related to one of his friends / brothers, who is also a cupid. And he's also trying to find love, but I don't know why they focus on him so much as opposed to the other friends. Because that guy is not funny at all, I don't really want to root for his love line. I thought that he tried a bit too hard and it became cringy in the end. I did have a bit of second lead syndrome in the beginning, but after a while, I thought that he didn't really know when to back off, especially when it's clear that she's not interested in him. So overall, I give this 8 out of 10. It was enjoyable for the most part, but a bit draggy towards the end. So with that, let's move on to the next spread, which is for a show with less fillers, which is also my other 8.5 show, Welcome to Samdal-ri. Since this show is set in Jeju Island, I decided to use a blue construction paper for decoration. I've also used my Q2 subscription from the Coffee Monsters Co. since the theme is a nautical theme, which sort of matches the theme of the show as well. So as I mentioned, the show is set in Jeju Island. Basically, there are two very close childhood friends. They were practically joined at the hip, but something happened between them, so they are no longer as close. The female lead, her name is Samdal. Yes, she has the same name as the town that they live in. She's a famous photographer in Seoul. Something happened to her which caused her to move back to her hometown. On the other hand, the male lead works as a weather forecaster in his hometown. He's talented at his job, but for some reason he doesn't want to go to the headquarters and chooses to remain in Jeju instead. So this show is really about these two people mostly, but with all shows set in small towns, there's always a warm, homey vibe that evokes a sense of community. Actually, this reminded me of our Blues, especially with the Haenyeo storylines. Overall, I really liked it. I was always behind on this show every week. I don't know why, but weekends were so busy for me. I think I was watching at least 3 shows on the weekends. But every time I had to catch up on the episodes, it didn't feel like a chore to me. I overall felt that it was a very smooth watch. I like majority of the characters. I love the friends group, although I wish we had seen more of them. The main issue I had with the show is that the conflict that drives the couple apart was kind of weak. And there was an unnecessary love triangle. Like, we already know that the other guy doesn't even stand a chance. So why do you even introduce a love triangle to begin with? There's also one issue I felt they could have resolved so much earlier, but they dragged it to the end of the show. But as a whole, I really like the show. I think it definitely meets my expectation. It checks all the boxes I like in a warm small town romance drama. It is definitely one of the stronger shows out of all the ongoing dramas that were airing at that time. So that's why I think it deserves at least an 8.5 out of 10 rating. But ultimately, this one loses out to Death's Game ever so slightly, mainly because I thought the latter had a more unique and tighter plot. But if you're a fan of slice of life dramas, then this is a show that you should check out. But if you like your shows to be a little bit darker and more serious, then the next one is for you. I'm seeing a lot of brown undertones on both posters for this show, so that's why I chose a brown piece of paper for this decoration. This paper is a bit rougher than the other construction paper that I always use, so there are some markers that don't work well on this textured paper, like the Archon Olive acrylograph. I also use the Ode to Da Vinci washi tape from the Coffee Monsters Co. because there are some sketches in the design and it kinda reminded me of the show because they're doing some experiments in this show, so I assume that there are probably blueprints lying around. I feel like if you're on Netflix, you've probably heard of this show. I keep seeing it all over my FYP on TikTok, but I was so scared that I would get spoiled because I had the incredible foresight to wait until all of the episodes were released before watching, instead of entertaining Netflix's nonsensical release schedule with 7 episodes first and then 3 episodes a few weeks later. You know how I feel about splitting a show unnecessarily. This show is meant to be watched in full and not in parts. I've mentioned my commonplace book before, but I feel like this show is a prime example of why I need one in the first place. This is based on something that's happened during the World War, so I wanted to have some background context to better understand the story. So my commonplace book helps me to incorporate the facts that I've learned with my own thoughts of the drama, so that I can have a more comprehensive overview of what's happening in the show. Anyway, this show is set during the Japanese occupation of Korea, so there's this rich guy, played by Park Seo-joon. He was asked to help the female lead find someone. Basically, the female lead, Han So-hee, and her dad, their job is to find missing people, and they are tasked with finding a missing woman by a high-ranking official. In order to find the woman, they infiltrated this hospital called Gyeongseong Hospital, and while they were there, the hospital went into lockdown because something happened. So most of the show was basically about them trying to escape the hospital while that something is happening in the background. I think that the title is quite a misnomer because it's really 70% Gyeongseong Hospital and like maybe 20% creature and 10% romance. I honestly wanted to give this a solid 8.5, but I had to rate it objectively, and objectively there were a lot of plot holes in the show. But I'm not sure if these plot holes will be addressed in season 2 or if they're just gonna remain as plot holes, so it was very hard for me to give a fair rating based on that. And some of the things that the main characters do were quite questionable. I don't see that they're doing something to really resolve the issue, like there will be more problems in future, and there wasn't a reason given as to why everything is happening in the first place. But I guess if you're basing it on the historical context, then there was no reason to begin with. So overall, I ended up giving this 8 out of 10. Although it was quite enjoyable, there were a lot of things which I felt were left unanswered. And speaking of unanswered questions, the next show has an ending which left me scratching my head. After binge watching Gyeongseong Creature, I decided to do another binge watch, and unexpectedly, I ended up finishing this like 2 hours after I finished that show. So yeah, I was kind of tired after that. The show's poster has a lot of blues, but I ended up choosing this purple and blue inkshot paper, mainly because I did not have any dark blue or navy paper. The washi tape is from Cookie Sticker Co. I think it's called the Just Like Magic Black Blue Drip. Their shop is no longer open, but I still have some washi from them. I like to use the drip washi for any crime shows or anything that is more serious, though I don't really know if you can call this a serious show. Even though the show is called How to Eliminate My Teacher, I don't think it's a show that takes itself seriously. Honestly, I don't really know what to feel about this show. I feel like this show was made only because they had no other show that was greenlit due to COVID. This show was like on acid. It's about this class called 3D, because in J-dramas, they are always 3A or 3D, there's no in between. They are the cream of the crop of the school, so they are like the top students, but somehow they are very sadistic. They enjoy torturing the homeroom teachers so much that their teachers end up quitting, so they get assigned to a new homeroom teacher in the form of Tanaka K. If you have watched my previous flip-throughs, you'll know that I somehow end up watching all of Tanaka K's dramas. So at this point, I'm not even surprised if I end up watching something solely for him. So anyway, they sort of torture him and he somehow manages to survive their torture. And he's always smiling and giving excuses as to why they're torturing him. He's like, yeah, I understand why you're being that way, even though he's the one that's being tortured. And because of that, they decided to kill him. So yeah, that is the plot. I was kind of confused because I feel like there were other several shows that I know with either murderous teachers or murderous students trying to kill each other or hold each other hostage. So I guess the plot is not so unique, strangely. What is new is probably the ending, which I don't really want to spoil, but after watching the ending, I don't really know what to feel. I didn't even know what I was watching even and what the genre of the show is meant to be. I didn't know how to rate this show, but I thought that I should give this a more objective rating because I sort of enjoyed watching this. It was kind of weird but fun, and the fact that I could complete this so quickly meant that it was a smooth watch. But objectively and based on how much I enjoyed this show, I give this 7.5 out of 10, which is kind of generous, but I cannot deny how fun this show was. So if you went into the show thinking that Tanaka K's character would be the unhinged one, then you're wrong. Someone else is even more unhinged. Their actions and their mannerisms are so animated for no good reason. But it's kind of refreshing to see this actor playing a different kind of role than those I've seen them in before. But now let's move on to the next show, which is not quite as entertaining. For the design choice, I decided to go with this light green paper for decoration, only because there were some trees in the background, and I feel like we haven't had green for decoration in a while. Since the sky in the poster has some pinks as well, I decided to use the pink spring bunny washi tape from Simply Gilded for the borders. So I only watched this show because I saw it on TikTok. My FYP is always filled with movies and series in parts, and they always make it look so interesting, so much so that I have to find all of the different parts. And if you're lucky, they will post the next part. If you're not, then you will have to wait for a few weeks, months, and years even. And the comments will be like, chop chop movie boy. So a particular movie boy uploaded the show in parts, and because it looked so interesting on TikTok, even though I've already watched all 10 or 15 parts and I already know what happened in the show from start to finish, I decided to watch the show in full, and I think that it was a bad choice. There's a reason why such TikTok accounts exist and are popular. It's for you to know only the more important parts and not care about the fillers. Anyway, the plot is about this king whose wife was assassinated. He was also assassinated, as in he died. The female lead, who is Jin-seon, she went into the palace, saw the dead king, she did something, and then he was revived. And when she saw the dead body of the queen, she realized that the queen was her long-lost twin sister. So in order to find the killer of her sister, she decided to enter the contest to be the next queen. So basically, it's like the Bachelor but Joseon version. And the king, because he came back to life, he started to have premonition dreams. And his dreams are usually related to Jin-seon. From the title, I expected something more cutthroat during the competition among the candidates for the next queen, but in the end, it was basically Jin-seon being kidnapped and the king knowing how to save her only because of his dreams. So yeah, that's the plot. It reprised throughout the entire 16 episodes. It got boring after a while. The leads were also very terrible. The first and last time I saw Jin-seon was in Doctor Stranger. That show is a whole nother story, but basically, she's not the greatest actor in the world. I've seen the male lead before, but he wasn't this bad, so I don't know what happened. But I can understand why this is not on a mainstream channel. So overall, I give this 7 out of 10, only out of the kindness of my heart. And finally ending the month with something a bit better. The poster of this show has a crumpled background, though I think it's because they are lying on the sand. So that's why I use the craft paper for the decoration. Though I'm pretty sure this is the packaging paper from one of my Hobonichi orders. This show is called Like Flowers in Sand. I wanted to give the alphabet stamps a chance again, and I was doing so well until I stamped the word flowers, and now I have the same issue as previously. And strangely enough, that's the other show of the male lead. But I couldn't be bothered fixing it, so I'm just gonna let it be. Since the show is set in a more rural area, I decided to use the Follow Me landscape washi tape as well as the free range landscape washi from Simply Gilded as the borders. This show is about Baekdu, who is considered to be a prodigy in serum, which is a Korean wrestling sport. So basically they compete in a sandpit, hence the title. But honestly, he kind of sucks now, so he's thinking of quitting. At the same time, this girl called Yu-gyong moves into the village and somehow gets involved with the serum team, and there is some mystery involving her identity, though it's kind of obvious who she really is. And in line with the recent trend in K-dramas lately, there is the murder mystery plot as well. I went into the show without any expectations, mainly because I wasn't planning to watch this. I already had a lot of shows on my plate, and since this is a sports drama, I knew there was a chance that I might get bored since I don't like sports. But it was on Netflix, and I thought that I would give it a chance. Interestingly, I did enjoy this. I do enjoy a good underdog story, especially in a rural setting. Kind of reminded me of the show Racket Boys. The romance was kind of cute as well. It has that warm, homey kind of vibes that is similar to other small town romance dramas. The male lead is my newest favorite actor. It's kind of interesting how he has so many shows releasing back to back lately, but I'm not really complaining. I don't really have any impressions of the female lead. This is the first time I'm seeing her, but I think she's okay. The main issue I have with this show is that even though the premise is really about Baekdu and his journey as a serum athlete, I feel like the sports aspect is taking a back seat and the murder mystery plot is a more central plot of the show, which is something that I did not expect. I expected to see more of Baekdu growing as an athlete, being better at the sport, going to competitions and winning. So basically a good heartwarming underdog story. But I think we only see that for 1 or 2 episodes, and most of the show was only focused on the murder mystery. So that's why I gave this only 8 out of 10, even though I really enjoyed the show as a whole. So yeah, that is everything I watched in January. So here's the final flip through of all of the spreads. I'm kind of curious to see how my TV show bracket and my prioritization matrix will look like at the end of the year. But for the rest of my media journal, you can see that my style is roughly the same throughout. I've been using this style since I first started my media journal in 2022, but I'm honestly getting bored, so I'm trying to change things up from next month onwards. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know that it's quite a long one. I hope you got some inspiration for your own media journal spreads, or maybe find new shows that you want to watch next. Comment down below if you have watched or are planning to watch any of the shows here, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!